And we constantly talk about men shunning responsibility.
Yeah.
And we see it, and I particularly like our position on abortion, to me, is an irresponsible position. That this leftist, liberal, feminist point of view, that's her decision. I don't control that. That's on her. Whatever she decides, I'm good with. And we just had this conversation today. That's an irresponsible point of view to have.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what you're saying. It's like when you take that irresponsible position, and now abortion, particularly here in America, if you go look at the percentage of how many black babies are being destroyed in the womb, you're actually co-signing your genocide and death.
Yeah, 12% of the population, almost 30% of abortions. Yeah. Yeah. And in most of our major cities, more black babies are aborted than born. So yeah, it is absolutely problematic. And now you touch me where I live. Okay, my wife and I, we've adopted 7 children. We have 9 children. 7 of them we adopted. And the reason that we got into the adoption world is because we just went from telling young women, "Give your baby life," to telling them, "Give your baby to us." And we realized that we needed to put our money where our mouth was, so to speak. And so this is something that is incredibly near and dear to my heart, and near and dear to my family. And you're absolutely right. And it's so ironic that on the one hand, we are up in arms about the police hunting down and killing black men, which is not the case. But nobody's saying anything about the abortion mills that are killing black children in the womb
and harvesting the organs.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so yeah, that the irony of that is something that it's sad to say the least.
I don't know if this is a proper question, but I've thrown it at people recently, and I want you to give me a biblical either justification or say, Jason, you're wrong, blah, blah, blah. But I've said to people, we have this arrogance in America, like, whew, those people 100 years ago, 150 years ago, wow, they were bad people. Look how good and superior we are.
Yeah.
And I've started to ask people, I was like, man, I would love to talk to God and ask him, slavery or abortion? Which group of people? One group co-signed for slavery, one group is co-signing for abortion. I wonder how God feels about that. Who's the superior of those two groups of people?
Yeah, it's interesting, and the Bible's very clear that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And ultimately, when you look at it, you're seeing the sinfulness of man and the inhumanity of man, towards man, that is a byproduct of our fallenness and our fallen nature. And whether it was, slavery, and you say 150 years ago, there are more slaves in the world today than there have ever been. And most of those slaves are black and brown people. And they're also being enslaved by other black and brown people, which has also happened throughout most of history. And so I think what we have to do is take an honest look at the fact that we are fallen people, and that we're being reminded constantly that we are sinners in need of a Savior. And sin is not something God takes lightly. Sin is something so serious that God crushed and killed his only begotten Son in order to atone for sin. That's how serious sin is to God. And so whether it is abortion, or whether it is slavery, or whether it's, sex trafficking, or whether it's, you fill in the blank. I think one of the dangers that we have is when we look at these big sins, we have a tendency to think that the sins in our own heart are not as significant. So I look at the slaver, or I look at the person who's, doing abortions or whatever, and it makes me think that what I've done is somehow not significant. When the fact of the matter is, I am as guilty before God, apart from the person and work of Christ, as the slaver and the abortionist combined.